Hello and you're very welcome to the JMac podcast. I'm John Mann. Of course, the podcast is brought to you by orcarich.com. You'll program JMac podcast to get 15% off on their website. And today I'm joined by former Mayo All-Star Conor Mortimer and GA Statsman Matthew Hurley to talk about the last round of league fixtures that took place at the weekend. And of course, this weekend's Allianz National Football League final. So really look forward to chatting to the lads today. Mort, how are you keeping?
Good, yeah. All good, yeah. No bad, man. For Monday anyway. Not bad at all.
Happy days. You look, they got the cream. Matthew, how are you?
Yeah, all good, John. Geez, good enough weekend of the action, and yeah, it was great to have us all on the Sunday, but it probably was a shame that Division 4, Division 3 games weren't on the Saturday, so they'd be split up. But at the same time, yeah, exciting into the league season, and looking forward to the finals this weekend.
It's all really looking forward to them, and hopefully we will firm up. Obviously, the GA waiting for their call on when the games are. Matthew, I suppose I think we're looking at Saturday for Division 1 and Division 2, are we? And Division 3, Division 4 Sunday, or is it the other way around? Or so far?
It usually is Division 3 and Division 4 on Saturday in Division 1 2. But Kevin McStay, obviously, in the last week or so, lodged a complaint saying that he wants the game to be played on Saturday in Division 1 because they're playing the kind of championship next week against Roscommon. So it's going to be, a hectic few days for the guys scheduling it. But yeah, at the moment it looks like Division 1 and Division 2 is on Sunday, but that could all change.
Yeah, could obviously all changes, and that's the GS. So we will wait and see about confirmation with that later on. Hopefully the news will break soon and everyone can start making plans for this weekend. Suppose, lads, we will crack into the action in Division 4 on Saturday in Chadwick's Wexford Park. It was Wexford 116, Carlow 13 points. Great win for Wexford there. Obviously, Wexford are trying to build blocks again, and that's obviously a good win against a pretty good Carlow team. They were in form up until that game. And then we'll move on to Sunday's action in Division 4 in Ruislip. It was Laois 6-6, London 2-8. I think London had a very, very good first half, but I think the wheels fell off dramatically in the second half. A lot of goals from the Laois end of things, so I think London will be fairly disheartened. But obviously, they'll keep trekking on. And then in Fraherfield, it was Wicklow 2-8, Waterford 8 points. Obviously, Oisin McConville's Wicklow get promotion to Division 3, and he will be absolutely delighted with that. Great first year so far for Mr. McConville. And then in Avant Money Park, Sean McDermott, it was Sligo 115, Leitrim 211. Obviously, Andy Moran was very irate after the game. Conor, obviously, you played with Andy, and that man has serious passion for football.
Yeah, I think it was a timing issue. I think he was showing him his clock or something after the game. I think with a few minutes to go, Leitrim looked like they were obviously being promoted, but I suppose some scores elsewhere, and that kind of, I think Sligo had a great obviously comeback to get promoted with obviously Leitrim losing out and Laois. So I think his goal would have been for promotion. I think that was a realistic goal for Leitrim. They've had a relatively good league, to be fair, and you're in a good position going into the last game, and as you did say, Andy's a very, very passionate guy, and it won't sit well. I don't know the ins and outs of the interaction or what it was technically about, but if he felt hard done by, I'd say he'd be fairly brown today over it. But they have improved on last year. I think that's a plus point for Leitrim, but ultimately, not being promoted is obviously very disappointing.
Yeah, he was not a happy bunny after that game yesterday, but I think Andy Moran was very vocal in his thoughts, and I suppose the fiction schedule, and I suppose how teams can plan around it. Obviously, he was saying after the game that Leitrim, it suits them to be knocked out or not get promoted now, and maybe that less extra game. But obviously, Leitrim definitely would have wanted promotion, but no, Andy was definitely not a happy camper, and Tony McAtee got the spoils, and he goes to Division 3 with Sligo. And then we'll move on to Division 3 action that took place yesterday. Kingspan Breffni Park. It was Fermanagh 114, Cavan 2-9. Cavan, another game. Bet obviously Antrim bet them last weekend for Fermanagh now as well. So not great stuff in Breffni Park yesterday by all accounts. Obviously Kieran Donnelly has that Fermanagh team moving very well, I have to say, very well organised. And obviously Ronan O'Neill, former Tyrone footballer with Kieran. So they are moving places once again. So it'll be interesting to see where Fermanagh end up this year. And then at TG Cusack Park, it was Westmeath 113, Tipperary 10 points. Good result for Westmeath, but doesn't put them in the promotion race. It's another year in Division 3 next year. And then in Glennis O'Connor Park, it was down 118, Offaly 9 points. Obviously, good win for Down. Blew Offaly out of the water. Talking to Anton Sullivan during the week, he was confident going into it, but that always doesn't work out that way, unfortunately. And it was a good win for Down. And then Glen Brothers Pierce Park, probably in a nothing game really, but it had to be played. It was Longford 3-17, Antrim 3-12, massively scoring game. Obviously, good win for Longford, but their fate has already been sealed for Division 4 football next year. And then we'll move on to Division 2 action that took place in Cusack Park, Ennis. It was Clare 2-18, Limerick 9 points. Unfortunately, another nothing game, Matthew, but a great win for Clare.
Yeah, very good win for Clare. And in fairness, it could be a good confidence booster for them going to the Munster Championship, because they have a huge game now against Cork and in Ennis, so they'll be well up for that. And that will be their aim, no doubt about that. But Limerick, like I said this a few weeks ago, I know Ray Dempsey was in charge first 5 games, but they kind of looked out of their depth in Division 2, unfortunately. They got 1 point out of a possible 14, and that was against a B team that struggled to score goals. So, look, it was very poor from Limerick. They'll go back to Division 3, and they'll be kind of crestfallen, really, the way Louth performed in Division 2. They're kind of on the same trajectory as Limerick, but Louth finished 3rd, Limerick finished bottom. Huge difference there, and they're going back to Division 3 next season. But for Clare, I think they could honestly beat Cork in Ennis. It's going to be a big game for them, massive game. If they lose that during the Tailteann Cup, maybe it's not a particularly bad thing for Clare, considering they could win it, a trophy in Croke Park, which could be the making of them, really. And in fairness, it would be the least they deserve under Colin Collins, who's done an outstanding job there. But yeah, all the same, that's going to be a really titanic battle between themselves and Cork and Ennis.
Obviously, Clare really let off the shackle test, and unfortunately, Clare's fate has already been seen. But they're a very exciting team to watch at the best times, and it's unfortunate they'll be playing in Division 3 next year. But it'll be interesting to see, can they bounce straight back up? No doubt they hopefully can. And then we'll move on to action that took place in Croke Park. Yes, the Mort. It was Dublin 16 points, Louth 1-6. A headline we did not see coming. Mr. Stephen Cluxton is back for Dublin out of absolutely nowhere. Nothing said about it. Nothing in the media. Desi Farrell is a cute man, Mr. Mortimer.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's they obviously have a bit of a crisis with their keepers with injuries at the moment. I know that, and obviously, I mean, Cluck, I think 41 now, hasn't played, in what, 3 years now, or 2 or 3 years, hasn't played club football in the same time either. Isn't playing club football. Obviously keeps himself in shape or whatever like that, of course, playing a bit of soccer here and there. But look, yeah, I think everyone is surprised to see him back. I think there's, I think someone said it yesterday, was it Jesse Farrell? He isn't back there to be part of a bench. If he's back to start, and that's probably what will happen. Provided his form is, I suppose from a keeper's point of view, it's probably one of those positions that age isn't really relevant. 41, 42, look at the likes of Tom Brady playing NFL, man, it's a far more enticing game out the field where all you're doing in goal is obviously having a good kick, and he's in good shape. He always is in good shape. He's slight, he's skinny. He's not a weight-bearing person at all, and it's just what the interest is in it is obviously there. He's obviously hungry to play, and yeah, it'll certainly be a benefit to Dublin to have him there. He's obviously, when he finished, was obviously the best keeper in the country. I don't think too many keepers have probably stepped up to say that's any different now, coming back. But will it upset a few players in the squad? I'm sure it will as well. But ultimately, Jesse Farrell's job is to get results for Dublin. It's not really to plumb us players who are a bit pissed off. I think the better managers make the hard decisions, and I don't think it was. I'd say they've probably thought long and hard about it. But he'll obviously help Dublin. There's no question about that. Just another bit of strength to their armour. I know Comerford has been out most of the season, and I wouldn't be hugely convinced by the other guys who are there at the moment anyway. So I think he will certainly help. And Mannion coming back is another big plus to them as well. And they'll be strong when it comes. There's no question. They will be strong. Are they favourites to win the All-Ireland? No. But will they be the team to beat? Probably. Yeah.
I suppose, Mort, obviously you would have played a bit with Stephen Close back today. Like I suppose at the tender age of 41, playing into county football now, and obviously, what do you think value can he add, to this Dublin setup in this current minute time?
Well, look at his goalkeeping expertise will certainly help. A lot of Dublin's success started from his kickouts. Like that's where the process started. That has been a little bit different the last 2 years. Obviously, having different goalkeepers. He'll bring a serious confidence to the defence, knowing he's there. And look at his experience around the place. I mean, he's captain 7 All-Ireland winning teams. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a phenomenal achievement, and that experience can only gain. I mean, Dublin have a lot of new guys involved in their squad as well, and for them to be seeing him knocking around the place would be a good boost for them as well, and give them an extra pep in their step. And I think it's very advantageous for Dublin to have him there. Very.
I suppose when you seen the news coming in, could you believe it?
No, I couldn't actually. I had to look twice. I was like, that's a spoof. But one of those things, man. It's in this game, man, in this world, nothing really should surprise you. I think it was probably, it's one of those decisions that, from a management point of view, like, do you take the risk and go for it? And obviously they did. If they don't end up being as successful, it's not going to be a blunt sword that comes down. You'll find, if they're not successful with the move. And as a team, I think at this point, I think it's Desi's 3rd year or whatever. Like, so the pressure's on, man. I mean, obviously they've got promoted, which is the first step, but ultimately they want to be winning All Ireland, and I think that's the channeling to bring back, obviously, McCaffrey, Mannion, and obviously Cluxton as well. And there's no guarantees. I mean, no matter how good you might have been 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there's no guarantee you're going to be at that level again. And that's the same for Jack and for Paul. All quality players, but every year players and every year squads and methods are advancing every year. And that's. Can these guys be up to that level straight away? Time will tell.
Matthew, what about yourself when the news broke about Mr. Cluxton yesterday?
Yeah, shock, to be honest with you. You wouldn't have expected him to come back. Like, as Mort said there, hasn't played in 2-3 years, hasn't played with his club. The fallout due to the training breach as well. I didn't think there was any way back from him. And to add to the point as well about the goalkeepers, I know there's a goalkeeper crisis further down the field, but I was chatting to Aaron about this yesterday as well, that David O'Hanlon has really done well for Dublin and goal, and the timing of it really, more than anything, was kind of a shock, because like what has David O'Hanlon done wrong in many ways to deserve this? But I suppose if he's not going to play, maybe that's probably the reason. Like, he's there for experience behind the scenes, because, like, in fairness, like, I think it'd be kind of harsh on David O'Hanlon if he's dropped for the Leinster Championship now, because he's done absolutely excellent in the league, and has arguably been goalkeeper of the league in the top 2 divisions anyway. He's been outstanding. So, like, when you look at the dressing room for Dublin in general, like, other than Cluxton, is there many leaders left? Like, it's Simon, possibly, Fenton, maybe. But so, like, Cluxton, I think he's there for general experience. I don't think he's there much to play, in all honesty. So it was a shock move. Like, I didn't expect it at all. Like, it wasn't broken in the news whatsoever. It was just a photo was taken by Dublin J, and voila, he's there. So it was kind of a shock, and it's probably, I mentioned this last night, that it's probably the most Cluxton-esque thing ever to do. And yeah, he did it out of tea yesterday, and yeah, it remains to be seen, John, whether he'll stay there for the rest of the summer.
Just fully expecting Jeremy Connolly or Bernard Brogan to rock up in the next game. We will wait and see. In the game itself, Matthew, Dublin at a canter.
Yeah, it looked that way. Well, I was on a live stream yesterday with Aaron and Seamus Brady from Play On J was at the game as well. And it was kind of a shock when Loud scored the goal, and you were thinking Loud could make a comeback here if Dublin aren't careful. But in fairness, Dublin, they saw the game out easily enough. But fair play to Loud, first and foremost. They played brilliant yesterday, and most people maybe expected them to get a hammering in Croke Park, but they held themselves up well, in fairness to them. They challenged Dublin for every ball. They attacked them in the first half. They could have easily got a goal in the first half. McKeever shot and hit the post. And I think they had a few other chances in the second half where they could have stuck it away any other day. So, no, we're there. And I suppose that will give solace to Mickey Hart as, they're there. They're in the Leinster hunt for championship time. Definitely, if they get to a Leinster final, it's going to be a monumental achievement for Louth. And it's definitely within their grasp and fair play to them. But for Dublin, still, attitude really isn't a problem for Dublin now. I just think the defence is a huge problem. Yes, Louth had brilliant goal chances and they created very well. But the Dublin defence was very open yesterday. And, it was very poor to watch. And it's been poor to watch for the whole league. Like I discussed with Aaron as well, I think the only game where Dublin didn't concede a goal was Kildare in the whole league campaign. And Kildare could have easily scored a goal in that game. So that's a huge problem for Dublin. If they're going to face the likes of Kerry, Mayo, Galway, Tyrone, they have to fix that problem sooner rather than later. So that's a problem Dublin needs to fix. I think attack-wise, they're motoring along nicely. Gallagher in the last game against Meath did very well. Conor O'Callaghan is still chipping in despite the fact he might be quiet in some games. Dean Rock is still starting over the freeze. Cormac Costello is chipping in. Brian Fenton has had a brilliant league campaign by his attacking standards. So, I think Dublin are motoring along well attacking-wise, but defensively, there's still issues.
Interesting stuff, Matthew. We'll wait and see. That Stephen Cluxton comeback is a podcast alone, and we will move on to action that took place in Newbridge. It was Kildare, 13 points, Meath, 8 points. Mr. Hurley, more, I suppose, disappointing results for me. Colin O'Rourke just can't really seem to get a kick out of them Meath lads at the minute.
You can't know. It's kind of crazy when you think about it with Meath. They haven't won since match day 2 against Clare. And when you think about the first 2 games against Cork and Clare, really the goals won the games for Meath. Like they scored 12 scores against Clare, compared to Clare's 16 that day. And maybe the writing was on the wall that this Meath team, they relied on goals too much. And as soon as the injuries came, the results came after that. The defeats, the constant defeats, and the draw against Limerick, which kind of felt like a defeat as well. So very poor into the league for Meath. It's kind of weird when you think about it. Going back to match day 1 and match day 2, we were thinking, is this Meath on the cusp of promotion? Is Colin O'Rourke need to kick out of these players? And now 5-6 weeks later, it's all turned around. And it's amazing how much things can turn around in that space of time. And Colin O'Rourke needs to find a solution to the problem. Like I mentioned to Aaron as well yesterday, that in the quarterfinal, Leinster all going well. They're playing Offaly. And Offaly seem to be going decent enough in Division 3. They had a decent win against Tip last week. They were putting up to many teams in Division 3. They have young players coming through. So I think Offaly could really put it up to Meath in Leinster. And Meath would definitely find it hard to get to a Leinster final lead, because in the next round then they play Westmeath or Louth. That's going to be no easy game at all. So, the league, Meath have to get to the Leinster final. Looking at the fact that Sligo will get to a Connacht final, and most likely, looking at form, Cavan or Down could be in the Ulster final. So Meath really have to turn up for the Leinster Championship. And the worrying thing is, John, I don't think they can. It's kind of a worrying thing for Meath, and Colin O'Rourke does have to fix it. But credit to Kildare. Like when you look at Kildare, even just about 2-3 weeks ago, we were talking about Kildare in crisis. And now a few wins on the board, and now everything's kind of back to normal again. Like you're 5th in Division 2, that should be enough to get them into the Sam Maguire. And despite their hard run to the Leinster final, which involves Dublin in that run. So, it's a good result for Kildare. Darragh Kieran, I think he scored 113 in a few games, which is an incredible record for a team somewhat struggling in Division 2. So, pretty good record for Kildare the last 2 games, and brilliant for them to get back up the horse. Maybe it's the start of a good form for Glen Ryan's side.
Badly needed more yourself. Good win for Kildare.
Yeah, they needed it. They were under a lot of pressure going into that game. Their performances the last 2 games were pretty dreadful, to be fair. And I know Glen Ryan, I think someone said about the last game, the Newbridge or whatever like that, kind of gave them a bit of a boost, but it was worrying times for them, pre-Meath. And they would have penciled in that game as well, because Meath seemed to have fallen off the wagon, a good bit in the last probably 4 to 5 weeks. I think they're struggling to find a way of playing. They're struggling for form. Confidence looks very, very low. And themselves said just there, man, they're going to find it very hard in all their games in Leinster. You know, their first one as well, and then, you know, moving into Vislow, the Westmeath, they're all tough games for them. And if your confidence is low, like, I mean, you know, Offaly, obviously, yeah, they've been moving well, like, and they're going to go into that first round of the championship very, very confident of winning that game. And if you don't get a good start against these teams, it's very difficult to find a way back. And Meath at this moment in time are finding it very, very hard to get a run going where you can build confidence on the field. And I mean, like 5 or 10 minutes of a run in a game where you're getting 3 or 4 points and things are starting to work for you. They're not having that look at all at the moment. And, you know, for a team like Kildare, who had hockeyed in the previous game and they won relatively well at the weekend and they're comfortable against Meath, it doesn't bode well for O'Rourke's side. I think, you know, he's going to be feeling the pressure because at the start of the year there was big hope in Meath when he took the job, but it soured a little bit. And, you know, it's like anything, winning games is what it's all about, and if you don't win games you won't be there. And I think Cullum, you know, they really need to get a style of play, get some confidence going and get some wins under their belt. You know, they got a couple of challenge games I'm sure they have to play now and before they come in and play the first round, but it doesn't bode well for them at the moment.
I suppose more obviously the soundness from O'Rourke after the last game. He was saying that it'll not take a couple of months, it'll take a couple of years. So you're kind of thinking, if you're a Meath player on that team at the minute, you know, what must you be thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that's when things aren't going well and you start a job. I mean, that's the go-to line. I mean, yeah, it takes a couple of years. It does take a couple of years to instill the way you want to play, and you're changing players in relation to the style you want them to play. But I think the problem that they have is there is no style of play. I think that's the problem. It's not, you know, you're going to go 6 months, 10 months, 12 months, then you're into the following year. What's the style of play? I mean, there should be some evidence from watching Meath of what they're trying to do. If it's being defensive, have everyone behind the ball. If it's using, like, look at Mayo, for instance. You know, you'll hear a lot. They're doing a lot more kicking. They're doing a lot more movement inside, a lot more direct ball. There are 3 things that are evident that we haven't been doing in the last 4 or 5 years. And that was after 2 or 3 league games. You could see that, where with Meath, you know, there has to be, so you have to, if this makes sense from a coaching point of view, you have to watch, if you're watching Meath or watching any other team, you know, you need to be able to say, yeah, they're coached well and they're trying to do this or that. That's not evident at the moment in Meath, and that's no disrespect to the coaches, because a lot of the time players can find it difficult to change their ways. That takes time, that, you know, a year or 2 probably, but at this level, you know, if you're bored or ruthless and they think there's potential in the squad, you're not going to get your 2 or 3 years to implement a style of play. You got to do it pretty much straight away, and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Just to lift themselves to the Leinster Championship will be very interesting, but it's worrying times for Meath and Colm O'Rourke. And we'll move on to the took place in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. It was Cork 114, Derry 114, and obviously Rory Gallagher gave the Derry lads the full week off. Obviously they've got the draw out of that game. Obviously Cork will be happy with the draw as well, consolidating Division 2 football for next year. Mr. Hurley.
Yeah, decent draw in. To be honest, like what I was watching the Armagh Tyrone game, I was like, look, it was 113 to 1-8. As soon as Derry got that goal, I think it was through Downey. And as soon as that went in, I was like, no, I'm turning the phone off now. Good luck. We're going to lose this game against Derry. But in fairness, the lads bounced back. And according to people that were after the game, Cork would have won it at the end. So, look, you've got to be happy getting a draw against a very good Derry side. Like he still has Shane McGuigan on the field, one of the top scorer of the top 2 divisions. So Derry still had very good players out there. Niall Toner, I think, was on the field as well. Conor Glass might have come on as well. So like Derry still has good players, and Rory Gallagher still wanted to end the league on a high, ended with a 100% record. Like Derry would have been the only team to do so. So they still would have loved to win the game, not as much as Cork, but anyway, Derry still wanted to do well in the game. But Cork to get a draw, yeah, very good results, very good at the end. In the end, it didn't matter. We would have got 4th anyway because of Kildare beating Meath. But good result for the lads, a good confidence booster ahead of the Clare game. Now, I suppose the negative is Clare will be on more of a high than Cork going into the game, considering they beat Limerick. They hammered Limerick this weekend. Cork, last 2 games, 1 point out of a possible 4, which probably is underwhelming for John Cleary. But look, we'll move on to the next 2 games now. A bit of a worry. I think Colin Manny and Brian Hurley are out for the Clare game. So that's going to be 2 huge scoring threats out at the first game of the championship. And it's a huge game because the winner of that is most likely going to progress to the final against Kerry. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting for football. And, yeah, good result against Derry yesterday.
There he is, Kevin McCarthy.
Hello, John. Hello, boys.
Kevin,
How's Connor?
how you doing, man?
I'm alive. I'm only out of the gym. I know you work. I know you run a gym.
Very good, very
but-
good.
As you can see, John has been giving me a lot of hassle recently, and I recently met up with Matthew, who intimated to John that I was a little bit overweight. So just out of the gym and then went into the pool for a while, you know.
Good, man, good.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. How's life, Kevin? All good?
Yeah, all good. I enjoyed that last weekend of the league. Really interesting. Some great stories coming from the league. I suppose going right back to when we previewed it, John, I got some things right, but probably a lot more wrong. And I'm sure Connor this morning is very happy with what his own county has done. And myself and Matthew, probably what our counties have done is probably what we expected, you know, just surviving and not really progressing much. But some great stories throughout the league. Obviously, Louth is one that caught the headlines. But the other one for me is Fermanagh, which is a huge story. I don't think anybody would have predicted Fermanagh coming out of Division 3 and their consistency in the league. And I'm sure Mr. Statsman and Mr. Hurley will give us, but their score difference and what they conceded in that league is quite impressive. So yeah, there's lots of different stories. Obviously, Oisín's story going into Wicklow in his first year and doing what he's done there is another great story. And I suppose Clare have been relegated. They've been surviving in that league for a long time. But if we actually review back on their league, they lost a couple of games. Kildare one comes to mind by a point or 2. They lost another game by a point or 2, and all of a sudden they're relegated on 4 points. So how cruel was that league for them? So lots of great talking points, and looking forward to discussing it with the lads.
What's it like to see Conor Mortimer again, Kev?
It's great in 2 ways. It's great in one way. Conor, unbelievable footballer. One of the best forwards of the last 10 years that we've seen anywhere. However, nightmarish for me. From both his DCU and his University of Ulster days. Not fond memories for me, but Conor's a person, top guy.
There we go. Conor, same thoughts on Kev?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of the good guys, man, over the years. Some phenomenal battles on the pitch, and I think, you know, the biggest thing for me, and I don't think this is replicated across the lands, that Kevin McGorty was a serious football player when he played ball. Like, there was no, I don't think that credit has been there in enough times over the years. So I think for me, you know, an incredible footballer, good guy, gave us all, you know, and was obviously hugely successful, obviously in college times as well. And, you know, we had quite a few good battles back then, and you know, it's good to see you, Kevin, and it's good to see you being successful as well.
Well, it's always good that we can still share a pint. I suppose that's the beauty of the GA after all them great battles. Can I just mention one more thing? I should have said it, John. One of the most iconic clips of the last 15 years in the GA is Conor Mortimer's tribute to Michael Jackson. Has to be in there.
And you wouldn't mind, but I rarely see it anywhere.
Yeah, that's my problem, Conor. That clip would be up there. If RT are thinking of doing the best highlights of the last 20 or 25 years, that iconic clip has to be in there.
If it was in America, man, in the NFL, it'd be an ad on the TV, man, across the nation. Good times. 100%.
100%. More, I'm aware you need to go there, or how you fix your time.
Yeah, if you want to just touch on the Mayo game, I'll give you a few minutes and I'll go then.
Yeah, super stuff. Suppose we can kind of focus our attention. We'll finish off the Division 2 games in a few minutes. But yeah, your thoughts on Hastings McHale Park, Conor? Monaghan 2-14, Mayo 14 points.
Yeah, look at, Monaghan obviously were needed to win the game more than Mayo did, and that probably showed. Even though we were well in it, I think it was level with probably 6 or 7 minutes to go. Mayo had a lot of guys that hadn't really played a lot of league football up to now playing, which Max Day will be very happy about. It was a good, tough test. And Monaghan, to be fair, are I was talking to Kieran Hughes yesterday, the aristocrats are getting out of jail. They do it every year, and credit to them. I think it was a good result for Vinnie Corey as well, because the pressure was on. But from a Mayo point of view, very good league. Mayo will be very happy with that. A lot of guys bought in. Obviously, the loss of Lee Keegan and Oisin Mullen hasn't really come to the fore just yet. Do I expect it later in the year? Our defence will be a lot more tested when it comes to the Connacht Championship with Galway, Roscommon, even Sligo showing a bit of form as well, and coming into an Ireland semi-final if they can get that far. There's going to be a lot more tougher tests, but from the grand scheme of things, very successful league. Me all be very happy with it, and I would expect them to go all out next week to try and win, even though it's a week out from championship. I think that's games are what players want. The bigger the game, the more enthusiastic for the player, and I think there'll be a small balance with a couple of guys who are injured. Do they play? Probably not. But Galway looked good yesterday as well, and they have done so in a couple of games. They've found a couple of new players, and you want to be putting your marker down, because inevitably, provided Mayo can get over Roscommon, they'll face Galway in the game after that. So, for me, and I think for a lot of Mayo people, anytime you get to put the foot on the Galway neck, you kind of keep it there.
Well said, Mort. We'll leave it at that for you, will we?
Right, lads. Thanks, Kevin.
See you, Conor.
Cheers, Mort.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ian. Take care of yourself. There we go, Kev. He was a fine footballer, Kevin.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. He was a really, really great servant to Mayo. Remember, they made 3 or 4 All-Ireland finals in the space of 5 or 6 years. You had people like Billy Joe Padden was involved there. Obviously, Connor's brother Trevor was involved in bits and pieces. Alan Dillon, that they had at wing forward, was a superb player at the time. Tom Parsons, obviously, all these sorts of guys. They were great, great servants to Mayo football. And I suppose that's one of the difficult things about high-end sport. Sometimes you get great players that come along and they just don't get that ultimate medal for all the sacrifice they deserve. But yeah, he was class to watch. He's the sort of guy you used to pay in to games to watch, and he had some great battles down there with our old friend Finian Hanley. So, them Galway Mayo games are always great to watch, and I think we'll get another good game coming up next week, as he's outlined. Just a couple of points in that Mayo match yesterday. From a Mayo perspective, okay, they've run the bench a wee bit, but for me, it's a wee bit frustrating. I mean, I don't know what the story is with Tommy Conroy. He's coming in, he's coming out. I don't know if there's another injury been picked up there. I'm just not aware of them issues, but I want to see him getting more game time. And actually, the same with Ryan O'Donoghue. Ryan O'Donoghue came on yesterday on the 64th minute, and his form 2 years ago was incredible. And I want to see him getting back to them heights, and I want to see him getting more game time. And I'm very well aware that Kevin McStay knows his options pretty well there, and he has lots of options up front now. We spoke about that before over the course of the league. But as a fan, I just want to see them two guys get more time. Now, maybe Tommy is injured at the minute, but hopefully he'll be back for championship, because he is a good player. And look, they did miss him last year through his long-term injury. But in terms of the flip side of that with Monaghan, just basically 2 points on Monaghan. When the game was in the Milton pot in maybe the 65th, 66th minute, up stands that man, Conor McManus. 2 marks in a row, gets 2 vital scores to push them ahead, and then his calmness to slot home the penalty. Really, really key at a key time in a match in a season when you're looking for your big players to stand up. Boy, did he stand up. And the second point on Monaghan is, I think Monaghan was a bit like the Donegal job. There was weeks and weeks of speculation who was getting that job, who was in the running for the job, who wanted the job. You know, Vinnie Corey had obviously been, excuse me, in the background as a coach with Bandy. He had obviously transitioned into coaching straight from playing at the highest level. And he's a young manager in many ways, if we look at it that way. And he's being given the chance at the very highest level, Division 1 football. Like most people, I tipped him to go down this year. I just thought that delay over naming a manager, the fact that there were so many different names bandied about, and then who was going for it and who wasn't going for it, that uncertainty, plus the fact that, McManus was getting a year older, and so was, the likes of Darren Hughes, who's been another great servant to them. And they were a wee bit over-reliant last year on Jack McCarn, really, in a lot of games. So, look, I thought it might have went down, but we've got to give credit where it's due, and fair play to Vinnie Corey, and, fair play to his players. But to see a young manager being given the chance and doing so well, that's the point I wanted to make. And, look, to go into the Ulster Championship now, and they're going to have a very hard task, in my opinion, against Tyrone. I don't see them progressing in the Ulster Championship, but certainly to keep in Division 1 football, the way they've been doing it over the last couple of seasons, it's been spectacular. And, the good thing is that's getting them quality games every week. 7 quality games they've already had this year. They're going to get another quality game next week against Tyrone. And, the longer they stay in the championship, them games will stand to them. So, best of luck to them.
Absolutely. And obviously, like a cat with 9 lives. And I suppose, Kev, we were talking briefly earlier on about Dublin. I suppose the headline act, Mr. Cluxton, Stephen Cluxton back doing the warm-up. Couldn't really believe my eyes.
Yeah, well, let's remember, I want to make 2 points in this. First point is very simple, is that Stephen Cluxton had never officially retired from the game. He had walked away as such, and he wasn't involved in whatever else. So there was no official retirement. So we all assumed something. And the second point is, I'm probably piggybacking on what Kevin Cassidy said today on Twitter, and this is, Dublin seem to do their business very, very quietly. They go about things. We don't really hear a lot about it, even though there's a lot of media down there. And they just spring this surprise on us. And look, I would suspect that Stephen Cluxton is back in there because Desi Farrell is at the minute on convinced he's got it right from the kickouts and from the defensive point of view. And he's not bringing back a 40 or 41-year-old back into the squad just because he's Stephen Cluxton. He's had such an influence on this Dublin side, and indeed in the game of Gaelic football, the way that, he has certainly changed the role of keeper and the way that, you retain possession from kickouts. He's bringing him back in, I believe, to start. And, okay, it's the last league game, league final next week. I don't know if he'll be involved in that, but I certainly don't see him just coming back in to make up the numbers or for cover. I see him coming back in to play a role.
Yeah, it was remarkable to see him back, and we will wait and see what Stephen Cluxton's role is. I suppose we were just before you come on air, Kev, we were talking about action that took place in Park Queeve. Was Cork 114, Derry 114. I wouldn't say Derry were overly disappointed. I think Rory Gallagher gave the lads a week off. So I suppose your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, it was actually a decent game of ball. A bit like the Armagh Tyrone game was a very decent game of ball. Lots of mistakes, but I suppose the excitement of it is something that you look forward to. For me, again, this is the sort of game that Cork need to be winning over the next couple of years. It's okay, Derry had already qualified for the final, but we're coming back in there to a team that is certainly the pace setters in the league. And Cork, a bit like the Dublin game, they're the sort of games you need to be getting over the line. Yes, you could say at the end of it, when you look at it, okay, a 70th minute goal snatches a draw, but, Cork were always in the game. Remember, Cork were down to, 14 men for the last, 6-7 minutes of the game. And, in the final, I would say 25 minutes, Derry maybe only scored 2 points in that period of time. So Cork were gamer in the ascendancy. And that's the sort of point I'm getting at when they are in the ascendancy in games against the likes of the Meaves, the Kildare, the Dublins, or the Derrys of this world in that league. That's where they have to take the initiative and go on and win the game. And I'm sure, look, it's been a very topsy-turvy league, a very inconsistent league once again from Cork. I think there is improvements being made. Matthew knows more of the personnel, certainly, than I do. But, you know, we want to see a Cork back in Division 1. A very strong Cork makes for a better football championship. At the minute, as I say, riddled with inconsistencies. You know, we just have to look at the first round of games in the league. You know, Meath going down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and winning. I don't think anybody had predicted that. We want a strong Cork down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And we want a consistent Cork. And unfortunately, over the last 2 or 3 seasons, Matthew, just keep me right, that's 3 or 4 seasons in a row now Cork have stayed in Division 2. You know,
it's so, you know, I think it's 3. We spent a year in Division 3 as well. So we spent 17, 18, 19, and that's 3 seasons. So that's 6 out of 7 seasons in Division 2, and the 1 season the outlier is Division 3.
And my point being is that for Cork football, that's not acceptable. The county of its size, the county of its, you know, the ability that's there, certainly the fiscal resources that you would imagine that they have, you know, to be out of Division 1, having been such a mainstay for the best part of the last 25 years in Division 1, and not even challenging at the top end of Division 2. Yes, don't get me wrong, we have 2 very good teams in Derry and in Dublin, but it comes back to my original point. Cork's inconsistency is their absolute Achilles heel, and they need to sort that out. Their home form obviously against Meath, not great, lose 2 points there. To pick up a point, albeit with the last minute goal this weekend against Derry. Dublin beat them down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So, you know, there's 5 points dropped already out of 6 at home. You know, and that's a worrying sign. But on the flip side of that with Derry, yeah, I think it was important that that they got a week off. We spoke to Mal about this in our programme, and he had previously said, look, it was all about having 8 points on the board before Dublin came to town. They really put in a massive shift against Dublin. That game would have taken a lot out of them, but they got over the line and were in a league final. So they knew going down to Cork that really there was nothing really on the line for them. Again, it was good to get a quality workout against a decent team. Rory will be certainly worried with their last 25 minutes. As I say, they didn't really produce anything up front. You know, but again, it's the same figure standing up. You know, Niall Toner, we spoke about him before, his ability to get big scores at big times, you know, kicking 0-3. Shane McGuigan, also 0-3 from playing. He got a point from a free. Paul Cassidy, Brenton Rodgers in that engine house of stuff. Obviously, Rory had tried out a few players. No Conor Glass, no Chrissy McKeag from the start, even though they did come on towards the end. I think he changed up goalkeepers as well. So look, it was a game of experimentation for Rory, maybe running the bench a bit, giving people like Glass, like McKeag a break before obviously another belter game is coming up against Dublin. So they'll be very happy how their league has gone. Again, it shows that improvement. Yes, we were all blown away with what Derry did last year. The one thing they didn't do last year was, you know, get out of Division 2. For them to progress as a team, in my opinion, they need to be playing Division 1 football all year. Every year. And certainly this team, the talent it has, the manager it has, they deserve to be in Division 1. So that box is now ticked. Would they like to go on and win the league? Probably, yes, they would. But then it's all about that Ulster Championship. And nobody knows better than Ulster people. When you're Ulster champions, everybody's out to get you, and they will have a target marked on their back, but they'll know that coming into the Ulster Championship. So it's going to be a long, Derry fans are going to like me saying this, it's going to be a long summer for Derry, in my opinion. I think they have improved on what they had last year. I think that they have more options now coming into the squad. They've changed things up. They've played Paul Cassidy in the middle of the park instead of wing half forward. You know, Niall Toner seems to be now stepping up to the mark to assist Shane McGuigan up front. So this is, you know, it's good times for Derry. And I'm certainly liking their progress.
Yeah, they're definitely moving very well. I think it was a good shade for Rory to give the lads a week off, because by the looks of things, that didn't really make much of a difference, which is very encouraging from their end of things. We'll move on to Division 1 action that took place yesterday, lads, in Pearse Stadium. It was Galway 113. Kerry, 14 points revenge for the All-Ireland final that took place last year. Matthew, probably not a game for the ages, but Galway won't care.
Yeah, look, it's probably been a common theme for Galway in the league. They get over the line in not so much of a good game, to be fair, but it probably epitomises Galway's defensive structure, really, and stood absolutely outstanding in the league. And they have Robert Finnerty back. Damien Comer, was great to see him back on the field yesterday, first and foremost, as well. Shane Walsh, back scoring 7 points in 2 games, pretty good showing as well. So, like, to have, and as well as that, Robert Finnerty, have them 3 forwards back and Matthew Tierney firing as well, Tom O'Connell back. I think Galway, their forwards are coming in at the right time, and I think they're ready to fire in the championship. And it looks pretty good for Galway at the moment. Like, when you look at the league campaign overall, they only lost 1 game, and that was to Roscommon, the last minute point. So I think Power Joyce will be relatively happy with his league campaign. From his side, they face Mayo next week. Obvious acid test for the Connacht Championship for them. But for Kerry, look, it's worrying times, I think, because without Clifford and O'Shea, I think they're kind of a bit average, I think, for All-Ireland champions. I don't know what you lads think yourselves, but I just think Clifford and O'Shea, once you take them out, I don't think Kerry are much in that team at all. You look at the way they pressed Galway yesterday, they could have got in for a goal easily, Brother Power, brilliant save, but I think Galway, in general terms, I thought Galway had the game wrapped up really earlier on. I thought Galway were probably the better team by far in the game yesterday, and I just thought Kerry were kind of off the pace. Maybe it's Jack O'Connor just preparing for the Munster Championship, but then again, in the Munster Championship, they're not going to get a game against Tip and Water, let's be honest. The best game they can hope for probably is the Munster final against either Cork or Clare, but then again, either of them couldn't give them a game either. So it's probably bad preparation for Kerry moving into the All-Ireland group, because as I mentioned to Aaron from GFan TV yesterday, Kerry could be in a group of debt with someone like, let's say, Mayo, Roscommon don't reach a Connacht final, which is a very big possibility. They could be in a group with Kerry, and Kerry wouldn't be battle-hardened then. You know, they play Division 1 football and they haven't performed particularly well, other than Clifford and O'Shea, who perform well in periods of games. So I just think Kerry, they aren't going along as nicely as they planned at the start of the year. It's kind of a worry. But for Galway, I think they'll be relishing the league final next week, and they'll definitely want to win a trophy under Power Joyce. I think this will be, other than the Connacht title, this will be their first national title for Power Joyce, which is going to be a big achievement for them. They lost to the Division 2 final last year. They don't want to lose another league final this year. So, I think Galway are in a good place. But for Kerry, I think quite a worrying times ahead.
Oh, a Cork man concerned about Kerry. Are you sure about that?
I would concur a lot of what Matthew has said. In fairness, I am deeply worried about Kerry at the minute. As you know, I'm very much a Kerry enthusiast. One of the things that has drawn us so much to Kerry over the last maybe 20, 25, 30 years has been great Kerry forward lines that are potent at scoring, that turn over the scoreboard on a regular basis, that it's not just about 1 or 2 or 3 forwards, all 6, maybe even the 2 midfielders are contributing. One stat, I think I lifted this from the Irish Times this morning, so credit to who has done this, but one stat tells a story in this match. Kerry scored 14 times from 28 attempts. Galway had 8 attempts in the second half and scored 6 of them. So the potency in that, the shot selection, the ability to take the right options tells its own story there. And Matthew's very right about the Galway defence. When we look at that Galway full back line, and let's remember Sean Kelly's up for Player of the Week, I think, in the GA.ie. We must remember how good that full back line was yesterday. I mean, David Clifford scored twice yesterday, and I think that was both from frees. Again, Sean O'Shea is turned over the scoreboard, but 4 out of his 5 scores yesterday were from place balls. Obviously Tom O'Sullivan is a guy, he kicked not 2 yesterday. He's always turned over the scoreboard and looking to get forward. But I'm very worried about Kerry in the league. They just haven't been as potent and as brutal as they have maybe been over the last couple of years. Certainly last year, they wiped everything before them. So, and defensively, there's holes there too at the minute. And I think the league has offered up more questions than it has answered anything from Jack O'Connor moving on from last year. There certainly seems to be a hangover. If we look at the 6 points that they did gather in Division 1 this year, was Armagh at home, was Roscommon at home, and was Monaghan, I believe, at home. So again, when you look at them, they were the three teams really, or two of them three teams were fighting it out for relegation. And, the win over Roscommon wasn't pretty either. Let's be honest about that. So, look, there's definitely a hangover here in the Kerry squad. They'll not be pushing the panic buttons yet, but I'm slightly worried about how things are progressing there. I expected them to come back with a sort of strong campaign this year, top end of Division 1. And this just hasn't happened. On the flip side of that, for Galway, if we look at their second half performance in the All-Ireland semi-final last year against Derry, it was built on defence, and obviously then you're looking to your Damien Comers, your Rob Finnertys. Maher has been actually very good in the league this year for them. Paul Conroy again contributes with a goal yesterday. So Matthew Tierney is probably arguably the player of the league, one of the most consistent footballers in the country at the minute. So look, they've a lot going forward as well, but everything is built on a very, very good defensive structure, and particularly that full back line, which deserves special mention after yesterday. But things progressing well for Galway. I do think they'll get a sterner test next week against Mayo. I think Mayo have lots of options up front. I think Mayo have a very, very good midfield as well. So look, I think we're in for a very good game in that. And look, it might be Porrick Joyce looking for his first national title as such, but believe you me, Kevin McStay want that as well, and everything is sort of being built up towards what will be an excellent finish to the league.
I wouldn't mind being along that sideline in Croke Park to hear them pair of boys going at each other, and they will move in to Dr. Hyde Park. It was Roscommon, 21 points, Donegal 9. News broke during the week that Paddy Carr has stepped down from the Donegal gig. Obviously, I suppose Donegal are in absolute turmoil at the minute. I suppose news in recent weeks is that, or recent days, that they are going to back Carr Lacey if he does want to take the role again. But yeah, Donegal have been absolutely toothless all league, and their fate was sealed yesterday.
Yeah, where do we start on this for Donegal? Look, I think I put it into our WhatsApp group. For me, their season's over. Their season's over, and that's because of the turmoil behind the scenes. The county board, I don't know all the ins and outs of this, but from an outsider looking in, and again, I apologise if I have got this wrong or implicate anybody here, the county board took too long with the process of appointing somebody to come into this role. They created uncertainty. The players are sitting around when maybe some of their other inter-county colleges across the country, guys are at college with or work with, whatever else. These guys already had maybe training programs for the year by the stage that Donegal were just getting their act together. So that's the first thing. It took far too long for the county board to appoint somebody to take over from Declan Boner. They were aware Declan Boner probably wasn't going to stay on. Who were they lining up? Who were they in talks with? We don't know that. There was a lot of talk about Rory Kavanagh. There was talk about Jim McGuinness. There was talk about Martin McHugh. So they had all this talk about who was coming in, and yet nothing happened for a number of weeks. Then alongside this, we have the shambles then of somebody that is really at the top of his game in terms of Carl Lacey. A guy who not only, well, probably for me, he's Donegal's most decorated player ever. I think he's 3 or 4 All-Stars, to go alongside, the medals, the All-Ireland medals he won, also Championship medals he won. But he was also already seen by a lot of his peers as somebody that was going to be at the very highest end of coaching. He then does get involved in the backroom coaching of it. He's gone in to take the academy. He's not only got the playing side of things and that background, he's also a very illustrious academic background. And here's a guy coming in, put in place structures that are vital to the development of Donegal GA over the next 10 to 15 years. And it is no coincidence that when Carl Lacey resigns, there is a mass en-bloc resignation by all of the other coaches because they believe in what he's doing. They fully back him, and they fully understand that the way he's being treated is unacceptable. So you have these two parallel things going on of the county board not appointing a manager in time, that sort of vacuum being created there where the players don't really know what's going on this year. And then alongside that, what's going on in the background for the future development of Donegal also seems in turmoil. So it's a complete another, I think Sean Kavanagh described it as shambolic. And he's very accurate on that. It's a mess. It's just
first thing he's been accurate, I think, since he started punter.
Well, everybody's entitled to their opinions on different things. But look, it's a complete mess. Donegal's in a complete mess. They've now announced this independent review. We have still, the mad point is, we've still no clarity on the Monday after this game about who's going forward. According to Aidan O'Rourke yesterday on RT Radio 1, he was told he was only in charge for this game. So what is happening in the next week or two? What are we going to see? We just don't know. And that gives players absolutely, I mean, Colin Cooper says last night they sort of down tools. But in a way, look, the players don't really have any guidance on what's going on at the minute. You know, if you work in a job or you work in a company or you're in a political party, you need leadership. Leadership is the key thing that you need. You need drive, direction. You need to understand where a project's going. Donegal don't know. These players don't know anything at the minute. So the sooner that's fixed, the better. But for me, their season's over. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm just touching briefly on the game yesterday. For the first 15 minutes of the game, it was nip and tuck, 4 points each. In the second sort of quarter of the in the second quarter of the game, sort of, you know, Roscommon then, you know, they just opened the floodgates, really, you know, Stack, the two Murtas, Ben O'Carroll, you know, they're push on then, and you know, by halftime there's that 5 point gap. And even when I was listening on the radio yesterday to this, you could tell that Donegal were about to collapse. There was no urgency about them. And this is a Donegal team with not bad players. You know, there's a lot of talent in there. You know, Patton's in there. You know, Owen Ban, Michael Langan. You know, Kieran Thompson. You know, obviously Jimmy Brennan. We know that obviously their captain and Patrick McBurty is a big loss to them at the minute. But look, there is talent there, but it's really where they're going to go now. And just the last thing, touching briefly on Roscommon, an excellent league for them. You know, Davy Byrne deserves a lot of credit. They started the league like a house on fire. You know, the home win against Tyrone, excellent. You know, to get to be the only team to beat Galway in the league this year as well. You know, in a nip and tuck game, you know, they come out on the right side of that result. You know, to get a result against Donegal. You know, I'm sure he is more than happy of himself and Mark McCure, more than happy of how things have gone thus far. Now they face into a huge Connacht Championship where, you know, to win that Connacht Championship, they know they're going to have two outstanding performances against both teams in the league final next week. So, look, it's a 9 out of 10 for Davy Byrne. You know, maybe one more big performance would have been in the league, but you know, it's going well for Roscommon. It's going better than probably I had envisaged it going for him.
Davy Burke.
Davy Burke, sorry.
Lads, we'll have to get our grammar sorted. We've had a calamity the last couple of weeks. We will move on to O'Neill's, Healy Park. It was Tyrone 18 points, Armagh 16 points. Mr. McGurty, Armagh got a good 2 point win, and Tyrone got a good 2 point win, and Armagh fate sealed for Division 2 football next year.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a. We just touched on Donegal. Let's touch on Armagh. It's been a bit of a chaotic week for them as well. Although nothing happened, there was just lots of black eyes. Coincidence, must have been a hard training session. I think off the ball, somebody said on off the ball yesterday, I'm not to say who, that there were 7 black eyes in the changing room. So maybe it was a hard week. Hasn't paid off for Armagh. Paid the ultimate price yesterday by going down. I think the one good thing for Kieran coming out of the game is that Armagh were in this game for long periods of time. There is no doubt that they compete at the highest level. Maybe 1 or 2 results for them will stick out when they review back in the league. The Mayo draw in the athletic grounds is possibly one that'll stick out for them. They obviously, again, you know, when you go down on 5 points, you have to count yourself unlucky. obviously not having rain yesterday was maybe an issue. But for Tyrone, look, 3 wins on the trot.
What was your thoughts on the Real situation? Just before you, what was your thoughts on all the WhatsApp rumours, the videos? Obviously, Kieran McGeeney did squash a lot of them after the game, but it was just a disaster the week leading into it.
Yeah, look, it was a sideshow distraction. Obviously, we've seen a lot of the WhatsApp are going about. There's no smoke without fire. But the other thing I would say, and look, we have to take Kieran McGeeney on face value on this. It is unfair for us to try and comment or to try and prejudge what goes on inside a changing room or at training or whatever else between managers and players without knowing the full rounded facts here. And look, that's what we have to base it on is the facts. And we don't know them. So look, maybe there's more to play out in the next week or so. Who knows? But certainly, I believe it was a bit of a distraction. The fact that Kieran had to answer questions after the game about it yesterday shows how much of a distraction leading into the game about it is. The fact that there's been widespread WhatsApp message or whatever else shows that there has something maybe been going on there, and maybe it's resolved for all we know. But look, coming into the championship, it's not a good thing. They play Antrim 2 weeks' time, I think it is. I think they'll get over that hurdle, if I'm quite honest with you. But reading down the line in terms of player management relations, if there is any truth to this rumour, then that is not healthy for our man moving forward. But as I say, Kieran will take the positives out of the game as a manager yesterday in terms of, I think this was a decent game. Look, there was a lot, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of turnovers. It was exciting to watch. I think the teams were level on, I make it 10 occasions, possibly 11 occasions throughout the game. Darren, look, I want to mention a few names. Rooney McNamee kicking 2 points from centre back, somewhere where we haven't really been used to him playing. Petey Hart at wing back going forward, 3 points, the threat he's had there. Young O'Goose, who's come in this season, is a good player at wing half forward. Conor Patrick seems to be getting back to a bit of form. And then obviously that twin threat of Dara Canavan and particularly Darren McCurry at times yesterday from play. I think he got 3 points from play, maybe 2 points from play, but he always seemed a threat. And look, this Tyrone team, 3 wins on the trot. They seem to be getting back to some sort of form like they showed 2 years ago. We're seeing players like Conor Myler, Petey Hart, Conor Patrick, Brian Kennedy, Kieran McGeary, Matty Donnelly back in familiar positions. And then obviously he didn't get a run out yesterday. The younger Canavan Rury's now involved, and also young Michael McLean who come on yesterday and scored a point. And as I say, Joe Goose, they've all added something new that wasn't there last year. And that's really important for Tyrone. And look, I think they'll be going into the Ulster Championship and they'll be quietly confident. They have a good group of players there. They're getting in against Monaghan, and yesterday was a good victory. They come out on the right side of the result. You know, it was in the balance a bit. You know, again, as I say, Conor Patrick stepping up with a bit of leadership towards the end. Rooney McNamee. From on the flip side of that, from Armagh, look, Conor Turbot, and particular Stephen Campbell, who I thought was really good. You know, stepping up. Aidan Falker scored a couple of points, but stepping up over to fill that void of rain. Armagh will look. They give a good account of themselves, but they'll be disappointed, really disappointed. After the league they had last year, after the championship they had maybe last year, we were wanting them to sort of kick on a bit. And it seems to have stalled ever so slightly. And I expect Kieran will want a reaction to being relegated, and we'll see that certainly against Antrim in the Ulster Championship. But yeah, who knows what's to come down the line for Armagh over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be very interesting to see how they go into the championship and the state of mind that the squad is in.
He knows something that we don't. He knows something that we don't. That's a right smile. That's a right smile. Maybe Mr. Murdoch can fill us in. Mr. Hurley, your thoughts on Rian O'Neill, the rumours during the week, the nonsense talk during the week, and quite frankly, the danger of forwarding messages to people.
Yeah, it's been a mad week. Like you didn't know what was happening in the camp. Like I had Armagh fans getting on to me saying, look, I'm not going to say the Armagh fans' name and stuff like that, but he was saying McGeady's slightly overrated as a coach and things like that, and he believes that something was going on behind the scenes. obviously we can't speculate, and there is a danger of things breaking out that shouldn't be. And it was incredible what happened. Even Green O'Neill named the team then, and then he doesn't play. And yeah, it's incredible. Even the interview that Kieran McGeady gave Ashton O'Reilly from off the ball afterwards was a bit, bizarre at times as well. And it was a strange situation, and hopefully we won't encounter those situations again, frankly, because it's confusing for media, it's confusing for pundits, it's confusing for everyone involved in Armagh, the fans. So yeah, hopefully this gets brushed under the carpet sooner rather than later. And it is, I agree with Kev, it's kind of worrying for this to break out at this time of year for Armagh particularly, because going into the Ulster Championship, like after the they're playing Cavan in the quarterfinals, and I'm sure, John, hearing that news, you'll be licking your lips at the moment at the prospect of playing. It's going to be an interesting few weeks for Armagh. But in terms of the game yesterday, I thought Armagh acquitted themselves excellent. I thought, like in the last few games, I was critical of Armagh because of their defensive tactics and not taking the game to their opponents. Yesterday, they got 16 points. They took the game to Tyrone from the first whistle. They gave it a right good go. But I think shooting let them down yesterday. They had 64% shot conversion rate, 9 wides compared to Tyrone. And Kev's right about Tyrone. Tyrone are really good at the moment. The players they brought in, Joe Bruce in particular, I think is an excellent player. Peter Hart scored 3 points as well. But as a collective, they had a 75% shot conversion yesterday. That's incredible. And Tyrone, I think, are motoring along nicely. We were talking about Kerry motoring along poorly. I think Tyrone look good just at the right time in terms of championship. I think they look really, really good. I know they're on the other side of the draw with Derry. That's going to be a tough ask to get past Monaghan first of all, then Derry in the Ulster Championship. But I think they're in the right place to do it. McCurry yesterday was sensational. Darragh Canavan went off, and you were thinking, is Tyrone going to fall apart? But then they didn't. They kept playing the way they did, and they knocked over a few points. Ronan McNamee, leadership. We talked about Donegal and leadership. Had none. Tyrone, Ronan McNamee, 2 points. Peter Hart, 3 points. Con Kilpatrick at the middle of the field. Cormac Quinn at cornerback. I've really been a fan of him throughout the league campaign. So I think Tyrone are motoring on nicely, and they could even win the Sam Maguire this year. I think they're hitting form at the right time this season. But for Armagh, it's disappointing. But at the same time, they put in a very good performance yesterday and acquitted themselves excellent after the circus that went on during the week.
Just one last point, John, on the McGuinney situation, and I maybe should have mentioned it before. Kieran's a very big personality. And if there is a sense of divide between himself and Rian O'Neill, this is just my own personal opinion. It would be very naive of Rian O'Neill to try and take Kieran on, because there will only be one winner. And we have seen this time and time again across many sports where the standout player in a team, managers get rid of very quickly if they need to keep the ambience within the group. And if there, again, caveat it with, if there is any truth to these rumours, we've seen Armagh have the ability without Rian yesterday to compete at the highest level against a team, in Tyrone who are really got their act together. And I suppose that's the most interesting thing for me to play out over the next 2 weeks or so. Really how this is sorted out. Look, I think as all GA fans, we want to see this sorted out behind closed doors, and that Rian O'Neill steps onto the hollow turf this summer in the Ulster Championship and beyond. But it would be naive for him to take on such a strong personality as McGuinney, because I think McGuinney may just use that conflict to motivate Armagh a wee bit more.
Did that galvanise Armagh yesterday, Kev, do you feel? Obviously, but then like a lot of people are kind of saying O'Neill was injured, and then we heard about the fallout, so I suppose hard to know what to believe at this moment in time.
Yeah, I don't know if look, when Armagh play Tyrone, anytime they're going to be galvanised, so it's hard to know, and that's why I say over the next couple of weeks, that's why we're watching eagerly, because that's when it'll play out. If Rian O'Neill steps onto the pitch against Antrim in 2 weeks' time and they absolutely ridicule Antrim, then all's well in the camp moving forward. If not, then the story continues and starts to grow legs and arms, and we then sort of speculate even more. So I think it's imperative that they put this to bed in the next 2 days or so, and there is a resolution one way or another for our man moving into the championship season. So for me, that's the important thing. And when we're talking about, just briefly touching on one of Matthew's points, talking about Tyrone and Sam Maguire, for me, the one thing I've taken out of this league generally is that we have now 8 contenders that could really win the All-Ireland this year. When we look at it, if we look at the 2 teams in the Division 1 final, we never write off Kerry or Dublin. We look at how well Derry are playing at the minute and Tyrone. And then you possibly add in, if Roscommon can put back-to-back decent performances together like they've done in the league. And for me, definitely 7 of them are in the running, with the possibility of Roscommon being the 8th one. And that's no disrespect to any other of the teams, but the league has certainly proved that Kerry have questions to answer, and that in terms of Division 1, Galway and Mayo have been outstandingly consistent, and Tyrone are on their way back.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Obviously, the league, a great template for the championship, Kevy. You picked up on Mal McMullen. Obviously, he put up a tweet yesterday about the games being at a certain time, and obviously it suit fans a lot better, but makes far too much sense, Kevy.
Yeah. Look, as I said, I don't think there's much point talking about it, because Mal has said what anything to do with common sense and marketing is. Unfortunately, Mal isn't in level 6 or level 7 of Croke Park and doesn't, we can't really get to say, but hopefully, again, that's something that it could almost be a show on its own about our ticket prices, how we do our ticketing, our marketing, our television rights. I think there's a lot of work to be done there, John, in how we actually market the game properly, especially the last weekend of the league. And even possibly the first weekend of the league. And, looking at the possibility, I've even said this before, if Cork are playing Kerry, can we get a Friday Night Lights game, for example, down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh? People might say, well, that's, we just can't do that. But look, next year, if we look at Division 2, the way it sits next year, you've got 3 or 4 Ulster teams, and you've got, Louth and Meath and Kildare there. The furthest team south is Cork. So there's going to be a lot of close games there. What about looking at one of them being on a Friday night? It's just a possibility to investigate, to look at, to maybe do for a year how you market games differently. And that gets school kids involved. It gets economies going. And if you look at a town like Armagh City playing against maybe Fermanagh on a Friday night next year, kids getting straight out of school, going in, bite to eat with the family and in the town, and then going out to the game for Friday Night Lights. Sure, look, we could start at 8 o'clock or whatever else, because the travelling time's not that much for people to get home. So investigate all these possibilities about how we market the games a lot better.
No way, Kev. Not a chance. Don't even think about it. Banging our heads against the window, Kevy, and we are never going to be listened to. But someday, Kevy, that day might come soon. We will move on to this weekend's Allianz National Football League finals, lads. We will look at the Division 1 final firstly. You have Mayo against Galway, of course, it will be in Croke Park, and the venue, or the time and date, I suppose, is yet to be decided just yet. But this game is mouth-watering, Mr. Hurley.
Huge game, yeah. Connacht Derby, like in Croke Park. I don't think, other than the COVID times, I don't think you would have ever really seen Mayo and Galway in Croke Park. So very, very interesting game. Like Galway, very good defence so far in the league. Mayo, well, we can't read too much into the Monaghan game because they were rotating him, and understandably so, rotating the team. So it should be a very, very interesting game. Like Kev mentioned, Matthew Tierney being the player of the league, I definitely agree with that. Paul Conroy, excellent form. You have Finnerty, Walsh and Comer now back at the team for Galway. For Mayo, they look brilliant so far. You look at James Carr, Aidan O'Shea, the form he's in at the moment, Jordan Flynn, the midfield partnership of Dermot O'Connor and Matthew Ruan. And I think it is the right 2 teams in the final. It is very, very intriguing to see these 2 teams in the final. And maybe there's an argument to say that Connacht is the best championship in the whole country and it's overtaken Ulster, seeing as Roscommon finished 3rd as well. So, like, I know the Ulster fans will probably hate me for saying that, but I think, honestly, Connacht championship looks very, very good at the moment. Yeah, it's going to be an excellent game, and very much looking forward to it. I think Mayo, I honestly, for an early prediction, I'd probably say Mayo to win it. But then again, it's kind of hard because at the same time, you could have an element where the two teams could be shadow boxing a small bit because potentially they could play each other in the Connacht semi-final. So maybe they won't want to give too much away, considering it's the league. There's no danger of relegation. It's an opportunity to express yourself. Obviously, there's a title on the line, but would these two teams rather win a Connacht title or would they rather win a league title? It's a dilemma, but it's definitely an interesting one. So, yeah, in order to predict, I'll probably be able to win it, but Galway will definitely give it to them throughout the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will move on to the Division 2 final. Derry against Dublin, Croke Park. The game we all want to see. Round 2, Kevy.
Yeah, I mean, the GA is just touch lucky with these two league finals. What two games we have in store, Obviously, the narrative in the Mayo Galway game is very much one of two Connacht teams, two teams that over the years have played out some great games, a great defensive structure in Galway versus this great setup, of a very potent Mayo attack at the minute. So lots of narratives around that game, as Matthew's explained. But this game equally, when we look at Dublin Derry, when we look at the game that they've already had in the league and how close that was, yes, Dublin had to go up there, but Derry taking the fight to them. And Derry have had a week of a break, let's just say that. And look, they've gone down to Cork yesterday. They've done what they've had to do. They've ran the bench a small bit. Chrissy McKeague's got a bit of time off, and so has Conor Glass. I think that I think them two players in particular for me are highly influential in this game coming forward, along with McGuigan up front for Derry. So the reason being is Conor Glass against Brian Fenton is like Muhammad Ali against Sonny Liston. That's going to be a cracking contest. It's going to be, Brian Fenton, I think, Matthew will keep me right here, he scored 1-6 or 1-7 in the league this year, which for Brian Fenton isn't overly great, if you know what I mean, compared to his incredibly high standards. He's been a wee bit more quieter, maybe in the last 18 months than we've seen him when he first burst onto the scene of 3 or 4 years of incredible stuff. Glass is such an influential player. I was highly disappointed in him. I'm a big fan of his. I've seen him from minor club level growing up, but I was highly disappointed in him in the club final, if I'm honest with you. He didn't contribute as much or didn't stamp his authority in that game as much as I thought he could. So it'll be important to see how he gets on inside Croke Park. Chrissy McKeague, who's he going to mark up front? Is he going to mark Con? Is he going to go out on Kieran Kilkenny, which could be an intriguing battle? Is he going to sit inside in Cormac Costello? Is he going to be in alongside Dean Rock? So it's going to be interesting to see that matchup, who Chrissy goes on. Because obviously the Dublin full forward line has been quite potent this year. Again, young O'Gara's come in there and he's starting to kick points for them. But for me, Cormac Costello and Kilkenny are still key. Pascal, if he plays again, as I said before, is another excellent player in there that can contribute to the scoreboard. On the flip side of that for Derry, really is can Niall Toner, can Paul Cassidy, can even Lachlan Murray coming off the bench. Can any of these guys assist McGuigan with turning over the scoreboard on a regular basis? And that's the big question mark that Derry have. I do believe that the Dublin full back line is suspect. And we have seen that in a couple of games. I mean, if we look back on the Cork game, for example, Cork had a couple of chances there that if they'd have taken them at the right stage, Dublin could have been in trouble. If we look back at the game up in Celtic Park, again, Derry, there's once or twice where Derry were able to get in a quick ball and turn over the scoreboard quite easily. So I do think that there is holes in the back in Dublin, and I think that's Dublin's Achilles heel at the minute, is their full back line. And I'd like to see Derry exploit that. But I really think we're in for a cracking game. And again, for me, when Rory Gallagher is looking at the trajectory of this team, yes, it was great to win against Dublin in Celtic Park and great to get promoted. But this is a chance early on in the season, before they go and defend their Ulster title, to get a huge quality game inside a very pressurized setting in Croke Park against, one of the top 4 teams in the country, in my opinion. And, Derry couldn't ask for anything better. And for me, if I, I want to go and see Derry embrace this. I want to see Derry take the game to Dublin in Croke Park. But I think we're in for a cracking game, and some of them matchups that I mentioned are going to be absolutely staggering to watch. I can't wait to see Fenton and Glass. That's going to be some contest.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Croke Park this weekend, lads. Really looking forward to that game. And then we'll move on to the Division 3 final. It's Cavan against Fermanagh in Croke Park. Of course, Matthew, obviously Cavan bet yesterday in Breffni Park against Fermanagh. They will be looking to right that wrong this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, it's a worrying sign for Cavan. They've lost 2 games in a row now. If they lose this game at the weekend, that's 3 games in a row against the Ulster Championship, where you're most likely going to play Armagh. So maybe not such a good sign for Cavan in form-wise, but maybe they were just taking their foot off the pedal, and they were preparing for this league final and the game against Armagh coming in the Ulster Championship as well. But both sides have a very good spread of scores. I've noticed, like, Cavan have 21 different scores as far as I counted. Fermanagh have 20 different scores. So there are scores all over the field. So that probably makes the game more intriguing than it is, and in fairness to them, it's a pretty good record. Like a defence, actually, I think Cavan have a better defensive record than Fermanagh. Like, the main thing with Fermanagh, Kevin actually mentioned Fermanagh's defence. It's not really been. I know they've conceded 61 points, which is decent enough, but they conceded 11 goals. So that's kind of an avenue where Cavan could go down. They scored 2, obviously, in the final game of the National League as well. So I think Cavan, if they could go for goals in this game, I think they could easily beat Fermanagh. But Fermanagh, very good scoring rate all over the field. Alton Kelvin's having an outstanding league campaign too.
Great goal yesterday. Serious goal yesterday. Great goal, yeah.
Brilliant player. And brilliant AFL player back in the day as well. Very, very good footballer. Aidan Breed won 8 as well. Darren McGurn, brilliant league campaign. Ryan Lyons, Sean Quigley is still popping up with crucial scores, even though he's only scored 3 goals from play. But then again, crucial scores. That's the main thing with Sean Quigley. Shane McGolden's doing well. Josh Largo-Ellis with 1-1 as well. Ryan Jones, Garvin Jones, Conor McGee. They're doing well for Fermanagh, and Kieran Donnelly's bringing something into them. And Cavan, they look pretty good as well. Like Raymond Galligan seems to be doing well at the scoring stakes with 9 points. Ryan O'Neill seems to as well. Connor Madden, Oisin Brady, obviously Paddy Lynch. I think he's the top, second top scorer in Division 3 behind John His, and that's a pretty good record for him. 320 overall, 3-9 from play. So pretty good hard for both sides, and I think this will be a very intriguing game. 2 Ulster rivals as well, and 2 Ulster, like 2 sides that really hate each other as well in the heat of battle. It should be a very good game up in HQ.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully we can right the wrong from yesterday. Just something that popped into my head there, lads. Division 3. Kev, Westmeath have to be very disappointed.
Yeah, and you'd wonder just... I got this totally wrong, John, at the start of the year. I'm not afraid to say that. I didn't think Cavan were in the mix because I thought they were too over-reliant on Geroid McKiernan in Division 4 last year. And they'd just come up, and I maybe thought with the quality of the other teams coming down, especially with Dan getting Lavery in and Awfully having won the under-20s a couple of years back. And then looking at Westmeath, who'd been in the division for a year or 2 after being relegated from Division 2. I just thought there was too much quality in there, but fair play to Cavan, and Fermanagh have been the surprise story. But ultimately for Westmeath, after the year that they had last year, of course, you'd think that they would have kicked on slightly, and that hasn't happened. Again, very much like Cork in Division 2, very inconsistent. And that's what's cost them.
You'd wonder what's going on in Westmeath. I think Jason Sherlock was at some parade in New York while the Westmeath game was going on, if I'm correct on that, Matthew. I think Jason was just pictured at some parade. I don't know. It doesn't look great, does it?
When you look at it's a strange one with Westmeath, because when you look at the stats and the figures, they've only conceded 1 goal, and they're the top goal scorers in the whole National League. So how they haven't got up is a mystery, really. But when you look at it really detail, the teams they've beaten: Antrim, Tipperary, Longford, and I think they beat Offaly as well. So that's four wins against sides that are in and around the relegation zone, which isn't really impressive. Like, the games they lost were against Down, Fermanagh and Cavan, and those were the promotion sides. And probably that was the difference between themselves and themselves not going up and themselves going up. So I think Westmeath, but then again, they're guaranteed a place in the Sam Maguire Cup, so I don't think they'll be overly disappointed at all. But yeah, it's a strange reason why Westmeath can go up. They have outstanding players, like I mentioned at the start of the year, with Ronan O'Toole, John Heslin, Luke Loughlin, Dolan. But it's a mystery how they haven't gone up with 14 goals scored and 1 conceded. And the one they conceded, I think, was a down penalty. So they didn't actually concede a goal from play in the whole league. So the stats look good. But on paper, they aren't in Division 2, and ultimately they'll be a tad disappointed.
Yeah. No, and if you look at Division 3 overall, I think Offaly will be disappointed. I know that obviously the tragedy in recent weeks of Liam Kearns, but with the players at their disposal and not really getting over the line, and then obviously Down as well, will be disappointed, particularly with that defeat in Fermanagh, which they'll reflect back upon in terms of not being promoted. But as I say, all credit to Cavan and Fermanagh, and the job Kieran Donnelly has done has been outstanding. He's a good lad. I'm happy for him to see what he's done. I think just touching on that match very briefly, one player for me that's really impressed me has been Darragh McGurn. Again, he can play at full forward. He can come out to centre forward. I think in the Down game in particular, he came out to midfield and won a lot of kick out there. So there's different options with him where he plays at, and he'll be a key figure, as well as Alton Kem, who is an excellent footballer. Ryan Jones has soldiered for a long time in the middle of the field, an excellent score getter, can kick points from distance. I think he scored not 3 yesterday, maybe. So he's another one that you got to watch out for. But I just think Cavan have played a lot more inside Croke Park over the last couple of years, and I would ever so slightly fancy Cavan for this one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a right dogfight, lads. But we will wait and see. Hopefully, Mickey Graham and the lads can right that wrong from yesterday. And then the last game of the weekend, it's Wicklow against Sligo in Croke Park. And we're looking forward to this one. It's Crossmaglen v Crossmaglen on the sideline. Mr. McGurdy, Oisin McConville, Tony McAnee has these counties up.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to say I haven't got much right this season, but I got that one right, that Sligo and Wicklow would go up. And I think the one thing about this game is that Wicklow are coming into this on a very, very good trajectory. I think they've had 4 wins in a row now. And, started a wee bit sluggishly in the league, but have certainly got their act together. A bit like Tyrone, they're on a roll now. Yes, their performance, you would say, yes, he was more than sluggish in terms of going down to Waterford, but there was a sense of inevitability about, I think it was 288 points they win yesterday. So, look, most teams in the league won handsomely enough against Waterford, and we always expected them to go down there and win, but it's been a very encouraging start for Wicklow. Remember, they went down last year, so getting in a new manager, revitalising the camp was going to take time, but to do it inside a year, especially when Sligo, Leitrim, and indeed Laois we're all in that league, who, Sligo and Leitrim, in terms of being under their management, were a couple of years down the line ahead of Wicklow. And, you always expected Laois to be strong within that league. So, fair play to Oisin. On the flip side of that, it's a totally different story with Sligo. This is their 3rd year under McEntee. Look, as I said to you before, Division 4 is a very hard place to get out of. He's eventually got it right. And, for me, Sligo, whilst Wicklow are on the run, Sligo are slightly more ahead of him, and I would expect Sligo to win that game, if I'm totally honest with you.
Yeah, I think the class might just tell at the end, but we'll wait to see. In fair play to Oisin McConville getting the Wicklow lads up to Division 3. Who would have thought it, especially in his first year? But there you go. Suppose a bit of housekeeping before we wrap up, lads. The nominees for Player of the Week are Galway Sean Kelly, Monaghan Conor McManus, and Fermanagh Ultim Kelm. Obviously, three very, very good nominations. And the Team of the Week on GA.ie was Mark Jackson, full back line of Brian Stack, Sean Kelly, Darren Newcombe, half back line of Ryan O'Toole, John Daly, Peter Hart, midfield of Emma McGrahan, Stephen Campbell, and then a half forward line of Colin Basquel, Derek Kirwan, and Ultim Kelm, and then Tyrone's Darren McCurry, Monaghan's Conor McManus, and Roscommon's Ben O'Carroll. Quite the full forward line. Lads, to wrap up, bet of the weekend, the player to watch, Mr. McGurdy.
Gonna go for well, I've built it up, so I might as well. I wouldn't say the player. The 2 players to watch going boxing are Fenton and Glass. I have to watch that. That's going to be immense. There's so many. You could talk about any of the Galway defence or any indeed of the Galway attack against Mayo and vice versa. But yeah, that duo is the two players I'm going to set out. If Derry want to win against Dublin inside Croke Park, Conor Glass has got to have a massive game, and he's got to nullify Fenton, who is such a big influence on Dublin. So maybe Conor Glass against Brian Fenton. The bet of the weekend, a Galway Derry double.
Galway Derry double. Interessante, my man. I like it. Mr. Hurley.
It's a tough one to choose this weekend now. I said earlier on in the league campaign that Dublin would beat Derry. I'm going to say, it didn't work the first time. I'm going to say it again. Dublin would beat Derry. It's in Croke Park. I think Dublin, this is the time when they could fire. And I think they might fire this game. So my bet of the weekend will probably be Dublin to beat Derry. Player of the week, I'm going to go obscure. I'm going to go Division 4, the 3 finals on the Saturday. I'm going to go player of the weekends. I'm going to go Pat Spillane for Sligo. Pat Spillane Jr. I think he scored 210 points in Division 4. So I think he could be a player to watch this weekend.
Perfect stuff, lads. Perfect stuff. All the games wrapped up last weekend, and this weekend's National Football League finals. Really looking forward to them. Kevin McCurdy, thanks a million for joining me. Matthew Burley, thanks a million for joining me. Of course, this podcast is brought to you by orgarich.com. Use the code JMac podcast to get 15% off on their website. Lads, thanks a million.
Slam, boys.